In this video, I'm going to walk you through the rationale outline activity and an example of a final paper so you can see where components of what will be in your outline will fall into your final paper. So in the outline activity, you have to complete 4 sections: the introduction, the purpose, the achievements or strategies, and the conclusion section. So in each part of the outline, you need to provide information that provides the basis for the final paper. For instance, in the introduction, I asked the question of how you will start your paper and engage the reader. And I asked that because a good paper has a good story to tell. It either shares personal experience or a scenario, an example from a classroom that you're observing, something that will catch the reader's attention. And then that story should connect to your purpose for teaching social studies. Now, the end of your introduction should conclude with a topic statement about what your purpose for teaching social studies is, and also highlighting your 3 strategies. So real briefly, showing you the examples. So for instance, this student did an imagination scenario. Imagine a world where students do not analyze, classify, or apply information they learn in school, where they only learn facts coming from one perspective, and so on. So he spends a couple of sentences getting into imagining a world where students do not do the things that he's wanting to do. Now, you'll notice toward the end, right here, the last couple of sentences, he says, "My main purpose for teaching social studies is to develop students who are knowledgeable, critical thinkers. My purpose allows them to continue their learning, grow into democratic citizens, and become open-minded individuals." And he says, "I plan on achieving my goals by teaching my students social studies skills, asking good questions, and teaching from multiple perspectives." Now, those last 3 things, the skills, asking good questions, and teaching from multiple perspectives, those are his strategies. These 3 components right here, continuing learning, becoming democratic citizens, and becoming open-minded, make up his purpose. They provide the definitional boundaries for what he's talking about for his purpose for teaching social studies. So let's return to the outline document. You'll notice it says, "My purpose for teaching social studies." So again, you'll repeat what your purpose is, maybe a little lengthier, 50 to 100 word synopsis. And although the component below is not required, this section right here is not required, I do think it's helpful to include some definitions by what you mean by your purpose. Now, these definitions are not the instructional strategies. These 3 things reflect the larger scope of what you mean when you say your purpose. So let's go back to the example. The student says the purpose is to develop students who are knowledgeable, critical thinkers. But as the reader, I would ask, what do you mean by that? What is a knowledgeable, critical thinker to you? And so what this student does is say, here my perspective is that I'm creating knowledgeable thinkers, and that's in this initial paragraph. But the 3 definitions, you'll notice, receive subheaders: an ability to continue learning, that they're going to walk into the classroom with prior knowledge, values, and attitudes they've learned from previous teachers, as well as resources beyond the walls of the school. But it's also to help them develop those abilities to continue learning. So they're not just coming in with prior information, but building and seeing themselves as continuous learners after they leave school and after they leave the person's classroom. And then another definition, developing democratic citizens. So the student says, "It is not our job to take social studies content and force information into their minds, but it's our job to give these students opportunities to learn and discover the content, and that it affects the decisions they make, their ability to critically think on their own." So this student, again, explores deeply what he means by becoming democratic citizens. And you'll notice right here a few different quotes and citations, and those counted toward the minimum of 4. And then finally, the final definition of open-minded students, and then spending some time explaining what that meant. The next section of the outline is how you will achieve the purpose. And again, I ask for a topic or a review sentence, mainly because I encourage you to have an overview paragraph in your strategy section where you highlight the 3 strategies, because at this point, you've spent 2 or more pages writing about your purpose. And a reader will forget your strategy. So you need to remind the reader about what you are going to be turning to next. So a brief overview paragraph. And then there's space for you to write in what your 3 strategies are, and then how they will reflect the overarching purpose. You have to make sure that your strategy connects back to your purpose. So let me again turn to the example. So you'll notice here a brief introductory paragraph that talks about how he will achieve his purpose. And not just saying here are my 3 strategies, but talk about why they're important. He's using these strategies to make sure students are successful and reach their full potential. They're usually used in order to achieve a purpose in a classroom, and then these reflect his purpose. So teaching social studies skills. Again, you'll note the idea of becoming knowledgeable critical thinkers. His purpose pops up. So you want to make sure that your strategies reflect your purpose, and your purpose it gets revisited throughout your strategy section. Talks through what these skills are. For instance, highlighting intellectual skills that want to be seen in students. And there is a citation. And then highlights the different types of activities that will occur in the classroom. So after defining in the initial paragraphs of this section, defining the strategy, he turns to very specific experiences. In order for my students to learn these skills, I would do activities that will allow them to understand the skills and then have practice in order to develop these skills as well. For example, I can have students develop their social skills in the 3rd grade when covering economics, and then spend some time talking through the example. That's what I want to see. I want to see an overarching understanding of the strategy, but then how is it reflected in your future classroom? The same turn occurs in asking good questions, where reflecting the larger ideas about what is asking good questions and why it's important to do so, and connects to a citation, but then also brings in the very specific example. So this student spent a sizable paragraph talking through what this strategy meant and how it came to the purpose, and then spent another paragraph writing about the ways in which it occurred in the classroom. And then the same thing happened for teaching multiple perspectives. Now the final section is conclusions. So how are you going to conclude your final exam to tie together your purpose and strategies or practices? And let's revisit this student. So this student says, teaching in the elementary grades, my students will walk into my classroom with minds hungry for knowledge and knowledgeable critical thinkers. As a teacher, I will make sure my students leave my classroom full of rich information and are able to think critically. The knowledgeable critical thinkers, and then revisits that purpose. My purpose is to develop students into knowledgeable critical thinkers. These students will be able to continue to learn throughout their lives, grow into democratic citizens, and become open-minded individuals. By teaching my students social studies skills, asking good questions, and teaching from multiple perspectives, I will be able to achieve my purpose for teaching social studies. So you'll notice there that the student highlights the purpose and highlights what he means by the purpose, those definitions, and then reiterates the strategies. My purpose and goals are very important because they allow the students to be successful in the classroom, but most importantly, it allows them to be successful in life and reach their full potentials. I want my students who become knowledgeable, critical thinkers to go on to do great things and make a difference in their classrooms, communities, and the world. Developing knowledgeable, critical thinkers is my purpose, but it should be something that every teacher should want to accomplish. So, beyond just highlighting, reiterating the purpose and the strategies, he proceeds like, here's why I think this is important. Just a final comment on the importance of his purpose and the role it plays in students' lives. And then at the conclusion, you'll see in the next page, references. So here are the 2 references the student used. And these were the 2 primary texts for the course, so the student could pull multiple citations, references from each, so he only cited the 2. I will not show you the grade, but you'll notice I'm on page 10. So the actual text of this paper was slightly over 8 pages. It was 8 1/4 pages, and then on the 9th page was the reference. Again, your paper should be about 5 pages minimum. You can go over, but typically the really good papers that get the full score of 20 fall in the 6 to 7 page range plus references. I hope this video helped. If there are any questions, you can pose them in class.